Hello and welcome to this next video on the major debates in the Norman Conquest paper. So in this video we're going to focus on question number 3. So just a quick reminder of all 5 of them here. You must have your own arguments, opinions prepared for each of these. And it's very likely that at least one of them will come up. It might be worded slightly differently, but these themes are so common in this paper. So first of all, you need to be able to talk about whether England was in a golden age or not. Was it a great place before the Normans? The second one is all about how William gets control. Is it because he's lucky? Fourth one, what are castles all about? Were they about war or status? And lastly, what was the impact of the Norman conquest? Was it negative? Was it awful for England? Did it create a Norman yoke? That is the final one. But in this video, we're going to focus on number 3. William got full control over England by ruthless violence. So this one is really all about rebellions, about control, and particularly focusing on those early years of the conquest. Now, I thought we'd start this video by looking at an exam question from a few years ago. Just a reminder of how these look then. They'll always look like this. You get 2 options. And it will start off by talking about a historian and what book they wrote or what magazine. You don't really have to worry about that first part though. So according to historian David Howarth in his book 1066, The Year of the Conquest, the next bit's the important bit. It will give you a statement. It took William 5 years of ruthless oppression to bring the country under his control. So let's just read the statement again. It took William 5 years of ruthless oppression to bring the country under his power. So this question is all about basically, how did William get power? How did William get control? And this third key question looks at it from a number of different angles. You need to know about the threats that William faced. What are the things which meant he didn't have control? How does he deal with those, particularly the rebellions? But also asks you to consider, how does William get control? And are there other important things that he does to control England, not just violence? Okay, so before we go into this argument, which is all about ruthless violence or not, worth just saying that there's no one in the world that would argue, well, no sane person in the world that would argue that William didn't use violence. Okay, so the Normans were violent, they did use violence. This debate is all about whether that is the main way they got control, whether that was the only thing that was able to get them control or not. So let's go through it. We're going to look at some arguments for and against the idea that violence was essential for control of England. So we're going to start off with some arguments to agree. So as it says here, William did get full control over England by ruthless violence. So argument number 1. As soon as Normans invaded, and then after the Battle of Hastings, they used violence to show their power and deal with anyone in their way. For example, on the way to London from Hastings, the burning of villages. So this point argues that the Normans could not have got started in England, even before the Battle of Hastings, without using violence. And we know they did go around to villages, particularly anyone that kind of got in their way or caused trouble. We know that they stole food off people, they burned down houses, they certainly killed innocent people. So this argues that right from the very beginning, as part of the plan for conquest, violence was essential, and without it, the Normans would have had no chance. Now, when the Normans do get into power after Christmas Day 1066, when William is crowned, there are then a series of rebellions. And the most significant one to talk about, if we are arguing the side that violence was essential, is the harrying of the North. Really important moment that you've got to be able to talk about. So the harrying of the North was horrifically violent, killing huge amounts of people and destroying so much land that it led to famine. This was the way that the Normans got control, particularly over the north of the country. And the argument here is that without this level of violence, the North would have kept on fighting back, kept on refusing to acknowledge Norman power. And the willingness, the way that the Normans used violence here is used by many to suggest, well, this is what they were really like. This was their main strategy. When they had trouble getting control, they turned and resorted to violence. And there's no disputing that the harrying of the North was absolutely horrifying. Last but not least, for this side of the argument, I think we should consider the fact that the English really didn't want the Normans there. On top of that, the Normans only represented 1% of the population by 1086, but owned 95% of the land. So how do you get 1% of the people owning 95% of the land? What about the 99%? Why are they putting up with this? Well, the argument goes, on this side of things, that the only way control like this could be secured is violence and the threat of violence. If you've got 99% of the country that are against you, there's no way you can control them unless they are scared. So that argument supports the idea that, yeah, it's ruthless violence which is helping or allowing William to get control. And even where there's not direct fighting, as the final sentence says here, many places are supervised by soldiers in castles. So, there's this feeling of violence, of fear all around the place. Now, what about the other side of the arguments? If we want to show this side, and remember, you always need to show both sides of an argument in all of your essay questions, people could argue that William did not just use violence. Okay, so remember, no one's saying that he didn't ever get violent. This argument is saying actually violence isn't the most important and isn't the only strategy William had. So first of all, we can argue that William tried to deal with rebellions in a fair way and did not take massive revenge, especially in the first years of his power. So our best example for this is in Exeter, where the first major rebellion happens with Gaither. Remember, that's Harold Godwinson's mum. And William was incredibly lenient. He could have been a lot more violent in controlling the situation, but he actually forgives the rebels. He promises not to take revenge. He tries to do deals, negotiations. He builds a castle. So this isn't using violence. This is using other strategies to try and control the country. Now, this is particularly relevant for Exeter, but also relevant for the north, you could argue. Because remember, William goes up there 4 times. So some people would argue that maybe the first few times when he's not been too violent shows that William did have other strategies, did try other things, that violence was only used in extreme circumstances. So we talked about the north, talked about Exeter. The final rebellion to consider is the one that happens in the east, in Ely. And as the point says here, when rebellion broke out in the east in 1070-71, William actually paid the Danes to leave, so the Danish Vikings, rather than fight them. He was also reluctant to send a large army to fight Hereward the Wake, and he only did so when the rebels kept on fighting. So this point argues again that it's not just violence William is using. He's using negotiation, he's using money to pay off the Danish Vikings, he's trying to hold back on using violence against Hereward the Wake. He doesn't want to create big scenes and big battles. So this suggests that perhaps William is getting control through other means. And last but not least, here's a more peaceful picture of William. We could say that, okay, so there are some significant rebellions in the north, in the east. But important to note that many parts of the country did not rebel. So why were they following what William said? Why did they accept Norman rule? Well, William uses many other techniques. He uses negotiations. He negotiated with Gaither. He negotiated with the earls, Morcar, his brother. He's often trying to do deals with people, convince people to go with him, and he definitely does this to some success with religious leaders in the country, some religious leaders. He also uses laws. If the question is how did William get control of the country, well, laws are really important. There is a new legal system, there is an organized way of controlling actions of people, which arguably that's not violence, that's just legal control. Castle and church building is an important thing, so worth considering that religion is used as a way to control people. And finally, land ownership, so taking over lands, putting Normans in charge of that, is again a way that he gets control of the country. And you could argue that that's not about ruthless violence. Now, it depends what you think here, because you could counter-argue. You could say all of these things are involving violence in some way. So the only reason people follow the laws is because they're scared and because violence is used to punish. the only reason they get land ownership is because of violence. So you can argue both ways here, and do try and do that in your essays. Try and show different sides, do some counter arguing for where it's appropriate. Okay, so let's just quickly look at the end of this video about how we might try and write an answer. So I've just written a couple of sentences here to get you thinking about the kind of the style we can do. So if we're agreeing with this, give you a moment just to read through this paragraph and consider the ways I'm trying to explain, not just describe, my point. Okay, so I'm trying to make a clear point. I'm starting to develop some evidence, and at the end I'm starting to explain it. And I haven't written a whole long paragraph, but you can see at the end I'm just reminding you to link back to the question. Therefore, this proves that, this shows that violence was really important, or ruthless violence or ruthless oppression was essential. And keep on explaining, keep on saying because and therefore. Okay, let's look about how we could write the other side of the argument. So again, just give you a moment to read through this paragraph. Again, just note at the end how we're making sure we explain things. We talk about how significant, important the points we are making are. It would be easy to finish that paragraph after the word churches, but you've got to link back. You've got to keep explaining, proving how and why this point links to the essay question, and fully explain what you're thinking. Okay, if anyone wants to look at a little bit more, just a reminder, the BBC videos are great for this, and this one in particular I think is good. So there's a video all about how William gets control of the country. I think it's video 3 or 4 in that series. It's just 5 minutes long, so it might be worth a watch as well.